Okay, hello everyone. It's me, Mr. Crawford here. Firstly, can I just say I'm so pleased to be joining you for a virtual assembly today. It's really, really exciting to be here. I hope you remember to take your coat and bag off as you entered the virtual assembly hall. And can I just say, I miss seeing everyone in our Stockland Green family so, so much. I hope you're keeping safe. I hope you're all right. And I look forward to when we can be back together again soon, celebrating assembly as a school and sort of sharing time together in houses. Okay, so I'm here today as a member really of the enrichment team, which is myself, Mr. Campbell and Mrs. Haynes, and I'm going to be talking about the school's new competition, which is based on the theme of diversity. I'm also going to be exploring why diversity is so important to us as a rights-respecting school and what it means to be a school that celebrates diversity in a range of different cultures and backgrounds. But before I do that, I sort of want to take a moment to pause. Now, I know that in assembly, one of the things we'll often do is we'll look at an item in the news and we'll think about why that item matters. And one of the things that really sort of struck me in the news happened at the weekend, and it was the unfortunate death of a young woman who was just in the wrong place at the wrong time. So this is a picture of Aya Hachem. And Aya went to the supermarket on Sunday, and unfortunately on her way there, she was shot. She was shot in the chest. Now, nobody's entirely certain yet as to why Aya died, but police actually think at the moment it may well have even been a case of mistaken identity. So one act of senseless violence has ended a young life. And the reason I've chosen Aya is, for me, Aya represents the very best of what it actually means to be British. So Aya wasn't born in this country. She came here in her later teens, and when she died, she was 19. And when she came to school, she had very little English, but she worked really, really hard. And when she left school, her head teacher was saying that she not only had a really, good grasp of English, she also wanted to go on to become a solicitor and to change things. And actually, for me, I think that is such an inspirational story, really. And it's a good story to stop and pause on, because Aya's commitment to wanting to help others is at the very heart of our school values, isn't it? Empathy. And Aya was clearly somebody who had so much empathy. And we're actually going to name this competition after her. We're going to call it the Aya Hachem Prize. The person who wins, that is what we're going to sort of call the winning entry. And I wonder if, before we could just move on, there are going to be many people in Blackburn, where Aya lived, in her school and in her community, who are going to be hurting at this particular moment and who are going to be experiencing grief. And I think it'd just be right for us as a school community to just pause for a moment and to remember those people and to think about Aya and her friends and family at this time. So I'm just going to pause for a moment of reflection before I go any further. Thank you, and thank you for taking the time to pause there. Now, in Aya's memory, as I've said, we're going to set up this competition, and the competition is all about diversity. And I think one of the things that makes Birmingham, I don't know if you know, I don't really think I was aware how lucky I was to live in Birmingham, to tell you the truth, till as an actor, I toured some other parts of the UK. And one of the things I became aware of is actually that Birmingham is one of the most culturally diverse places in Britain. And we're so lucky because we have so many different cultures on our doorstep. And I also think as a community, we're really lucky as well, because there's a whole range of different values and different beliefs in our school community. And quite often people will say to me, they'll say, Mr. Crawford, what do you miss most about school? And they'll expect me to say, oh, I miss teaching my lessons, or I miss marking my essays or marking essays. It's not that at all. One of the things I miss most is lunch times, because as you know, many of you will know, I take my lunch in the canteen. And this is going to become an even more relevant story than you realise in a second. And in the canteen, I often sit and eat my lunch. And one of the reasons I'll sort of be sat in there is I'll be sort of nervous about taking my tray up the stairs. And I'll explain why after the end of this little story. One of the things I've gained from sort of sitting in the canteen is that I get to sort of learn so much about students and their backgrounds and their beliefs and what they think about stuff. And one of my favorite lunchtimes recently, I was sat down and a group of lads came to sit with me and said, "How are you, sir?" I said, "I'm very well, thank you." And we sort of talked away. And we got on the subject of Sikhism. And they explained to me why they were Sikhs and what they believed. And we had a really great chat actually about what it meant to be a Khalsa Sikh and sort of how their faith influenced their life. And I always find those conversations really interesting. One of the things that I love about my job is I get to run the Pride Club at school, where we obviously celebrate difference and diversity. And I've learned so much from the students that attend that club about their sort of passions, their interests, and it's really opened my eyes, actually, to in some respects, how limited my own education was, because I've learned things from you as a teacher that I did not know. And I think it's true that there are two lessons that sort of take place, aren't there, in school? There are the lessons we as teachers teach, you know, your history, your English, your geography, your drama. I mean, it could go on. And then there are the lessons that we teach each other. About our own lives, the stories that we tell. And I said that I would talk a bit about the story of me being in the canteen. So I didn't always have a school lunch. I only started having them recently. And I got down to the canteen, right? And I got my lunch off Wayne. Massive shout out, by the way, to Wayne, who I know is still working very hard. And I got my lunch and I got it on a tray. And I thought, oh no, I'm going to take this up the stairs or in the lift. And I was really nervous I was going to drop it. And one of the reasons I was so nervous I was going to drop it, as some of you will be aware, I have dyspraxia. It's a coordination difficulty primarily. And actually, a lot of people will sort of say to me, you don't look like you have a disability, which I always think is a strange thing to say. And I'll say, no, dyspraxia is a non-verbal learning difficulty. You can't see it as such. It's not obvious when a person is talking. But at school, when I was at school, it was very, very obvious. Because every maths or science lesson, I would have to be accompanied by a TA. And I never did a single science practical myself. And I actually feel really sad about that. I had to have help because I would find it quite difficult to sort of manipulate the equipment or to balance things. And my favourite teacher at school actually was my science teacher. He retired, sadly, when I was in year 9, Dr. Grice. And I remember one science lesson, Dr. Grice came to see me. And he said, "How are you today?" And I said, "I'm very well, thank you, sir." And he said, "I tell you what, I'm never sure how I feel about the fact that you have to, sort of have somebody with you every experiment." And I said, "Yeah, I don't always enjoy it." And he said, "Why?" And I said, "Well, it always marks out how different I am." And the thing about Dr. Grice, he was really, really wise. And he was known at school as being a bit of an eccentric teacher. But we all loved him. We just all adored him. And I remember he turned to me, he looked me straight in the eye, and he said, "But you must never apologize for being different, because being different is what makes you unique. Remember, nobody is as good at being you as you are." And I've never forgotten that advice. And if anything, I sort of embraced it then. I thought, okay, yes, I have terrible balance. Yes, I'm really bad at drawing angles. Yes, it's really annoying that every practical lesson I have to have a TA with me all of the time. But actually, I was really lucky because at school, people didn't see me as the kid with the TA. They just saw me as me. And, they're like, "Oh, he's a bit clumsy." And actually, that's what diversity and being a diverse community, I think, is really about. It's about accepting somebody as they are rather than as we might expect them to be, and giving people the freedom to be themselves. And hopefully we're going to be able to celebrate this through that competition. So the aim of the competition is to submit a piece of work that kind of celebrates diversity, celebrates being a community where we encourage each other to share our own cultural stories, perspectives, and backgrounds. And you can enter any one of these categories. So I'll just give you a second to look at those categories and what they are. Now, it's worth saying that each category has obviously got a slight restriction on it. So if you enter the art category, you only submit one piece. Yeah, and there are word counts or time limits on each of them. But when it comes to submitting them, okay, you submit to the teacher who's attached to that category. So I'm very excited, for instance. Hopefully I get to see lots of drama entries sent in by video celebrating diversity and what it means to be a diverse culture. Now, it's worth saying that the closing date for entries is the 5th of June. So you will need to have your entries in by then. But staff will be available, as an enrichment team will be available to assist you and help you if you need any additional support. And what we'll do is, once we've got all the entries together, I will send an email to all the people who've entered explaining what we're going to do with those entries and how we're going to use them to sort of celebrate the diversity that is within our school. Thank you so much for giving me around just over 10 minutes of your time today for assembly. I hope you stay safe. I look forward to seeing you again soon. And I suppose all it remains for me to say is goodbye and take care. Thank you very much.